Indiana in the Morning, presented by First Commonwealth Bank on WCCS, 101.1 FM, AM 1160, and WCCSradio.com. And it is time now for one of our regular interview features, and it is presented today by Marcus & Mack, voted Best Personal Injury Law Firm in the Best of Indiana County contest. Marcus & Mack, a law firm representing injured people. And we are also live on Facebook today, so joining us on Facebook and here in the studio, of course, is Bob Pollock of the Cooperative Extension Office. Bob, how you doing?
Good. How are you?
Doing fine. How was your holiday?
Very good.
Excellent. Glad to hear that everything went well for that. So, New Year's. You and I talked off mic last week because I knew that you'd be coming in. I knew that I would be here.
And you knew that Todd wouldn't.
Right. So, what I wanted to talk to you about, maybe some New Year's resolutions for people who are involved in agriculture, whether they be farmers or the backyard gardener. What are some things that people maybe should keep in mind as we roll into the new year?
What are you thinking about doing in the new year?
Oh my
if
gosh!
anything.
Oh my gosh! You know what? One thing
related to gardening.
Well, one thing I would like to do actually, and I'm thinking I may have to ask my landlord about this, but I think he'll be okay with it. Maybe set up an elevated backyard garden. Is what I'm again, but that's a long ways off, and that seems like it's a big project to do one of those. I'm talking about something for like vegetables.
Yeah. And you could use that for flowers or other things also, but it can be a big project, but it doesn't have to be. There are, modular units, and there are units that you can buy are already raised beds. So, depending on your skill level and your ability and desire, you can start, design something from scratch, or get something that's already pre-made, or at least you have the pieces that you can put together, almost like building blocks, to build a raised bed. So yeah, that's definitely an option. And I think over the last few years, we've seen a little bit of an uptick in people wanting to garden. Everything runs in trends and cycles.
Yeah, I think that also kind of came about because of the COVID trend as well. People were at home, so they're like, I need something to do, and they found out that gardening actually was a pretty good thing.
Yeah, and they, that way, if you could grow things at home, that meant you didn't have to go somewhere, so you could do more things, related in your yard, in your garden, or even establishing one that you didn't have previously. So I think that is, something that continues. I think, that trend is still there.
I may wind up getting a railing box, to tell you the truth, but we'll just see what happens. And that's still that's still big though, because even in a railing box you could grow like one or two pepper plants or a whole bed of herbs for a garden, or a lot of beautiful flowers that way.
And we sometimes overestimate the amount of plants we need to produce, to get a crop. How many
you try in the field?
Right, how many zucchini can you eat at one time? How many peppers? How much lettuce?
Gosh, you remind me. Sometimes we used to have somebody in here who brought in zucchini and just said, "Take it."
So,
one concern I did have, and this was brought up a couple of weeks ago in one of our newscasts. There was an area that is being served by the Municipal Authority of Westmoreland County. One of their reservoirs dipping below levels, and they are now they're now under mandatory orders to try to conserve water. Now, this has been a relatively dry year, I think, for our area. So, what are you anticipating? Are you anticipating things to kind of continue on this dry trend? I know you're not a meteorologist, but this could continue. I mean, this could continue because we're having aside from a few days ago, we're having a relatively dry winter.
Right, so we need moisture, whether it comes in snow or rain, to recharge our systems. They're cyclical. That the water has to fall; it has to percolate through the soil to get to our wells, our cisterns, our springs, and to the water that goes in the streams, and then is picked up by municipalities if you're on a public water system. So all that has to cycle. I think every year we find ourselves. We don't tend to get into extended droughts like some parts of the country do. And we have and maybe we have a little more diversity in our water sources here too. We have a mixture of people on municipal systems, a lot of people, just because we're more rural than we are urban. We've got a lot of people that are on their own water systems. So I think that can end up being an advantage when we get into those situations. But every year we do get into periods where we either have excessive or not enough.
Yeah.
And so we just need to kind of plan ahead or think ahead if we need to water plants, if we have a garden or different types of gardens, and especially if we have container gardens, we automatically know that those container gardens will need watered more often than the same plants if we plant them in the ground.
Okay. So there's a New Year's resolution for the home gardener right there.
Yeah.
By the way, I should mention our phone lines are open if you want to ask Bob a question on this day before New Year's Eve at 724-349-WCCS or 724-479-1160. Call in. We'll get you in before the top of the hour.
Another area where I think people are making more considerations when it comes to gardening is from the environmental aspect of gardening. Picking plants or designing things in an environmental friendly way, or adding plants that, from the water perspective.
From the water perspective alone, there's going to be plants that can hold on to water supplies and help soil.
Or need less water.
Okay.
So you can use those, sometimes I call that xeriscaping, but plants that are adapted to our environment are going to be more resilient in most cases than plants we bring in externally. So just thinking about how we design things, the plants we pick, all can factor into those considerations for the environment and just trying to be environmentally sound.
All right. So by now, the average home gardener should probably have the roses all covered up and insulated with leaves and everything else taken care of. What are some other things that the home gardener should be taking care of now that we're getting into the depths of the winter season?
Oh, one big thing is protecting plants from wildlife.
Okay.
And we usually talk about that this time of year as we're going into winter. And
fencing and all that stuff.
Right, sooner rather than later. So we want to do that because as the woods transition, as food sources transition for wildlife, however, we have a lot of deer that just
they love it,
become very domesticated and roam the neighborhoods every day anyway. But this time of year they can be looking more for food. So you might have plants that they didn't bother all summer long, but all of a sudden they might become a meal or two. So just thinking about protecting plants from wildlife, that can be as simple as some netting that we put over top of them. It may involve some fencing, with snow fencing type fencing. More permanent type fencing. Put stakes in the ground.
Stakes in the ground and a metal grate around it or something like that.
Yeah, or a burlap. So we would do it for the wildlife to keep them out. Chicken wire, metal fencing, anything, even, rabbits. So not only deer, but rabbits
probably
also,
foxes and other things. Yeah, anything that would probably pick up a seed and eat it.
Yeah, so if you have chickens, especially, you mentioned foxes.
Oh, geez.
Yeah, they can wreak havoc on that if you're not careful with that. And then the other reason we might protect plants now or set up barriers is just for wind purposes. If you're in a exposed area, you have some plants, especially some evergreens that tend to be more marginal, that can lose moisture from the winter winds. We can put up a barrier for that. Salt spray is another reason to do that. Just, if you're close to a highway where people are, going 50, 60, 70 mile an hour, that salt spray will become a fine mist and easily is moved and can damage plants.
Yeah, it could damage plants. It could dehydrate them pretty easily, I would imagine, with the salt content. Yeah. So plant protection is obviously on top of everyone's minds. As I said, first off, insulation purposes. to protect the plants, but also to protect them from animals and to protect them from other elements of the wildlife out there. Gosh, wow, that went fast, didn't it? But
See,
you
worry about that.
I do worry about it because I'm not the farmer. I'm more of, if anything, I'm more of the backyard gardener. But I'm glad that you're able to help us out in that regard. And you know what? I think we may have to call it a day here. But you know what? Thanks, Bob, for coming in. And
you're welcome.
I hope the new year is full of good news for you.
And also for you.
Thank you very much. Bob Pollock of the Cooperative Extension Office joining us on Indiana in the Morning, presented by First Commonwealth Bank. Our interview is presented by Marcus & Mack, voted Best Personal Injury Law Firm, Best of Indiana County Contest. Marcus & Mack, a law firm representing injured people. One quick programming change. Tony Sutil not able to attend today, but we do have another interview scheduled at 8:15. That's coming up next on Indiana in the Morning.
Have you heard about the TYM 2515 tractor? It's a full-feature compact tractor that's made for landscapers, hobby farmers, and landowners. And through the end of 2023, get 0% interest and 84